What's up everyone, it's Bryan from the Exact Cybersecurity and IT YouTube channel. Welcome to another video where we help educate you about all things cybersecurity and what you can start doing to protect yourself. In today's video, we're talking about a critically important topic in the financial services sector. So if you're in the financial services sector, especially in the banking or credit union space, you're going to want to pay attention. You may be impacted or you may be one of those organizations who are dealing with this event, but it's a big one. Before we get into what happen and what these organizations can start doing to protect themselves, please remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and if you're so inclined, hit that notification bell and you will get notified when we upload videos just like this one. Now that you've subscribed to the channel, thank you for your support. Let's get into what happened. So 60 federal credit unions across the United States are dealing with the impacts or effects of a third-party breach by one of their major IT providers in this industry. Cyber criminals have targeted a company called Ongoing Operations, and they are a unit or a subsidiary of a IT or technology company, services company for the financial sector called Trellance. And Trellance has owned Ongoing Operations for some time now, and this organization, what their job is to do is to provide backup and business continuity services for these federal credit unions. This is how banks are going to get back on their feet should they have an incident like a cyber attack or a fire or a flood or some other unfortunate event that may impact their operations. They rely on these companies like Ongoing Operations to bring them back and get them back on their feet. And the fact that this company is having a ransomware attack, there's a lot of implications that you need to know about and we're going to get into in this video. The first one is they specialize in disaster recovery for business recovery solutions. So what happens if one of these banks gets attacked or one of these credit unions gets attacked while Ongoing Operations is dealing with this event? It's a big problem, and it's just mind-blowing that something like this could be happening to these federal credit unions, that their backup and their recovery solution is the thing that is down, that is out for the count, and they can't use should they need it. And it's also impacting current operations as we speak. But the bigger deal is that Ongoing Operations also offers cloud services to credit unions, ensuring that their business activities operate without interruption even when nothing else seems to be going well. That's what they say in their marketing. This is unfortunate because these cloud services that these company provides also is the things that customers are using to process things at these federal credit unions, like loan payments and other things like that. And it's becoming a nightmare for these banks to deal with. And this attack, just to give you a timeline of what happened here, began when Ongoing Operations was hit with ransomware on November 26, 2023. Immediate actions were taken, including involving law enforcement and notifying affected credit unions. We don't know the extent of what these hackers have gotten their hands on yet, but you can imagine what could be in these files that these companies have when you're talking about financial transactions of consumers across the United States. This is a pretty big deal, and there's going to be a lot of things that come out of this. One thing that struck me was the fact that so many credit unions use this company for this service, and it's not uncommon for certain industries to have their favorite vendors for certain things. And when these behemoths have a problem, it can affect an entire industry, as we see here in the credit union world, where 60 of these credit unions have been impacted nationwide as a result of this attack. In an update dated the 4th of December, MVCFU confirmed that its data processing systems remain non-operational and that it would take a little more time to launch our online banking platforms. Amongst other credit unions affected were New York Bravest Federal Credit Union and Secret Service FCU, who currently have prominent messages on their website apologizing for the downtime. So this is going to be a huge deal in the very, very near future, and we're going to learn a lot more, and there's going to be a massive fallout if data has been stolen or announced that they have data points of millions of Americans. It's going to be leading to things like class action lawsuits lawsuits and fines and penalties from regulators. It's going to be pretty ugly for potentially these banks and then also the provider of these services. These supply chain attacks, I've been talking about them on this channel for a while, and businesses need to be concerned with their partners and vendors. And the number one thing that I always educate everybody when they watch these videos is that you have to be aware of your supply chain. If you have important things that are critical to your business that you necessarily don't run, things like your IT or your HR and your payroll, these are things that you may outsource to other companies, but you need them in order to have your business function without problems, without customers noticing, without employees noticing. You need to take into account that these services potentially could go down and impact your business in some way, shape, or form. This was a big deal back in the financial services world when Kronos got hit, and I mentioned that all the time on this channel. Kronos ended up being down for 3 months, and businesses around the world had to scramble to figure out how to run payroll or manage payroll during that time. It wasn't a pretty event for the customers of Kronos, and I would imagine it's not going to be a pretty event for not only the credit unions involved in this, but also the customers of those credit unions when they try to do regular banking transactions that they need to do and they cannot do them. So let's talk about what banks and credit unions can do to enhance their cyber resilience. Number one is strengthen your vendor risk management. Everybody should be doing a vendor risk management with their key partners and vendors that their business relies on to do business. Regularly assess the cybersecurity practices of your providers and your partners. This can be done online through various services. This can be done through a simple spreadsheet where you just ask simple questions. Like if you ever applied for cyber insurance, you've probably gotten a questionnaire like that. Use something similar like that, send something to them and require a response back so you start to understand, does this company take things seriously enough for me to base my whole business or part of my business on their services? Again, payroll being a major one, or IT services. Does your third-party IT provider have good cybersecurity practices in their own IT company so they won't be the reason that you get hacked one day? These are things you should be assessing and that you should know, and you maybe want to hire a third-party outside assessor to take a look at these companies on your behalf. That's something you can also do, is outsource your third-party risk management and assessments, where you just give it to a third party and they do the assessments and come back to you with a report or an executive review of your vendors. And then you have a choice to make. Do you continue to do business with those vendors, or do you mitigate that risk some other way by having some backup plan or having a backup vendor in place should the primary vendor or partner fail you? And then we're going to go into some other tips that banks need to be aware of, making sure that they're doing kind of the basics, but make sure you have a patch and update strategy and do it regularly. This includes not only your operating systems, but your third-party applications like your Adobe's and your Microsoft Office programs and whatever else you install on your computer to run in your business, especially those line of business applications. Those are a big deal because sometimes they don't have auto update features and you need to go out to the vendor and get those files and get those updates from them through either a portal or website or some other method, so you can update these programs on a regular basis. It's critical that you have a patch and update strategy and do that as soon as you can. Tip number 3 for the financial sector to protect themselves from things like this is to implement multi-factor authentication. Make sure you're enforcing multi-factor authentication as an added layer of security above and beyond usernames and passwords. Because if those usernames and passwords get cracked or exposed in any way, multi-factor authentication is a key way that you can prevent hackers from getting into your banking systems and software. And you want to make sure that everything that you do, including your email and even the little things that you log into, have multi-factor authentication enabled. My next tip is make sure that you're training your financial employees on what to do, what to look out for when it comes to cybersecurity. Do they know how to spot a phish? Do they know how to report an incident? Do they know what an incident is? What should they do when they click on a link or open up an attachment? These are all things that you should be training your employees on. We recommend short trainings that occur regularly, at least once a week, maybe every other week, week, but really we see the most effective ones running at least once a week, short videos with a knowledge quiz or test along with them to make sure that your people are comprehending what you're teaching them, and then work with the people who might be struggling and give them a little bit more training or a little bit more encouragement to make sure that they understand that their role in this is very critical so that your company and your financial company does not get hacked. Tip number 5, make sure you develop your incident response plans. Make sure you have an incident response plan not only for your own company, but for when those vendors and partners get hit as well. You're going to have to change normal business operations as a result of these things, and you're going to want to have responses so you can minimize the downtime and impact to your business. That's the goal of incident response plans. So you want to make sure you have them not only developed, but you're working on them and you're working to improve on them. And usually when we see companies mature their incident response to looking at third-party issues and then having a response built in around those, they're pretty mature. And when it comes to this, so they've been doing it for a few years, this isn't something you're going to do out of the gate, because incident response is something that you always are going to start imperfectly on and then work towards maturing that and getting better at it over time, year after year. It is a plan that you work on. It is not a final destination. Tip number 6 is make sure you know where your supply chain vulnerabilities are and how they're being attacked. We're seeing things like MoveIt and Citric Bleed running wild currently, and Microsoft Exchange vulnerabilities. Make sure you understand that you have these things in your environment and that you're doing something about them, like patching them on a regular basis. Why do I call this out separately when I already mentioned updating and patching earlier? Because we see time and time again where there's organizations, very large ones, very reputable ones where you recognize the name if I said them, or sometimes that they don't remember that, oh, they bought this company a long time ago and this thing was over here. It's knowing what you have and being able to identify everything in your environment and having it documented and knowing where it is, where it lives, and who's responsible for it. These things, sometimes there are things that slip through the cracks from time to time, and these things end up getting hacked. So my tip number 6 is know where your supply chain vulnerabilities are. If you're using something from a third-party vendor, make sure you know if you have it, and if you have it, that you have a plan to regularly update it or isolate it if it's no longer being updated, or getting rid of it because it's end of life and it's no longer supported. So you're going to have to get rid of it or get it off the internet at least and isolate it so hackers cannot get their hands on it like they're getting their hands on millions of machines because of these different vulnerabilities that exist out there today. Finally, my last tip is to collaborate and coordinate with other people in your industry, especially businesses that are closed. So in this case, federal credit unions across the nation who've been impacted by this ongoing operations can coordinate their efforts, coordinate not only their communication, but also internally their operations, maybe how they're handling things. If they maybe had some missteps in their current incident response, they can kind of learn from other credit unions as to what's working for them. And it's a really good idea once this event's all said and done and the dust kind of settles down in the future here, that these credit unions kind of get together as an industry and kind of learn from this experience and learn to maybe diversify who they use and things like that, so it doesn't impact as many credit unions as this one did when one vendor goes down. But we've seen this before where vendors have gone down and it impacts many companies as a result. So good for ongoing operations, for getting themselves into the financial services space in this capacity. But these are the things that happen to an industry when a company has this kind of consolidated market base that they have, and they are providing these services to these 60 credit unions who are unfortunately down as a result of this attack. So love to hear from you in the comments. Have you been impacted by this attack on these credit unions? It's a big deal. We're going to figure out here in the next probably couple of weeks what's going to happen to these credit unions. But what have you as a customer of these credit unions been seeing or experiencing? Drop it in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.